Right, so it is the 19th of July 2021, and we have the great honour to talk to Margaret Calvert, the iconic British designer. And it is mainly about the Tyne and Wear Metro today, your connection to it, your involvement, but I think we need a little bit of context, to go back in time to where you actually were with your career and with your working life at that point.
Okay, going back to the actual metro, the Tyne and Wear Metro, that would be in 1970, either 4 or 6.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't sure, but I knew it was 70s.
Yes, late 70s, go for that. And I was a partner in Kinneir Calvert Hill Limited. And what is interesting about the company is that Jock taught me. There was 19 years, that's Jock Kinneir, 19 years difference in our age, and this was at Chelsea. And I taught David Hill at the Royal College of Art with only 6 years difference in our age. So it just worked out that way. And David invited himself to join the company because I think college students have got this confidence, and I thought this is going to be really difficult, two very different men, very different ages, but Jock's idea was that once he goes, because he wanted to retire at 60, I would have a partner. But of course it didn't turn out like that, did it? He stayed for about 6 years, and then he left to form his own business. But I've kept in touch. But very sadly, both are dead now. But I keep in touch with Mason Edwards, who was the most brilliant associate designer, because as a practice, we employed most from the RCA, and they were all excellent. So I keep in touch with Mason. Yeah. But my whole life, when I think about it, is by chance, pure chance. And these opportunities happen, and it's for you to decide whether you're going to go that path or that path, and that's what I've done all my life. But at Chelsea, I was delighted with Chelsea after being a school girl, at a I won't mention the name of the school because that would embarrass me, but the art mistress at the school was someone called Winnie Passmore, who was Victor Passmore's sister, who's a very famous landscape artist. And she recommended, I've always liked art, I've always, it's just art and sport is what I did all my life at the expense of other subjects. So I'm now just beginning to learn about that there's more to life than just art and sport. So anyway, she recommended Chelsea. I got into Chelsea, that was fine, wasn't very difficult at all. And I decided to do illustration and it's a 4-year course, which is very good. You get 2 years as intermediate, and then you have a choice whether you want to go into fine art, which is painting and sculpture, or printmaking and illustration. And they recommended printmaking illustration, so I did that. And then they invited a graphic designer to come in 1 day a week to give the illustrators some idea what graphic design was about, because graphic design did not exist then, as I'm sure you know. And so a brilliant German designer called Hans Schläger, absolutely amazing designer, he was into design proper as well as advertising. So he would come in and talk and set us the odd project. And I never understood a word he said. I think it was just, I don't know, I just didn't understand. But I knew he was a genius because everyone said he was. And I got to know him, once I'd left, I got to know him and his family. And anyway, he then eventually left, and then they replaced him with Jock. And Jock was an associate designer, design research unit. And so Jock came in one day a week, and I just took off. I used to, you know, art students come in any hours of the day, and I made a point of being at my desk. Well, there were long tables, they weren't really desks, just in time for his rounds, so to speak. So I worked really, really hard, and then suddenly the end of the year was coming up, and I thought, what am I going to do? And I certainly didn't want to go into advertising, and there weren't any. I knew nothing about graphic design or the fact that you could be an assistant or go on for another year. I didn't want to go to the Royal College of Art because I didn't want to do another thesis, which you had to do. And so I opted for the extra year at London University, doing a teacher training course, because that was the sort of normal add-on. And I went to the interview, and I said, well, you'll be doing puppets, and you'll be doing this, and you'll have to talk to 40 students in secondary modern school. And I thought, oh God, no, I can't do that. I think I was quite sort of shy in that respect. So I just felt not depressed, but I thought, what now? And then Jock came in and he said, I've got this job at Gatwick Airport to do all the graphics and the signs and that, and I need some help. So he offered me this job. So of course I resigned immediately from the course, the teaching course, and he said, I said, well, what would it involve? So he said, well, absolutely nothing like what you've been doing here. So I thought, oh well. Anyway, a few days passed, the following week, because it wasn't quite the end of term, it was all off. And of course my whole world, as you can imagine, I would have been 20, coming on 21, my whole world simply collapsed. And then he used to do lots of exhibitions at Wembley for the Milk Marking Board. And I lived in North Ealing then with my sister and my mother and sister. And I bumped into Jock on Ealing Broadway Station when he was coming back from Wembley to change onto another train. And I think the shock of seeing me, he just said, oh, it's all on again. Are you still interested? And I'm quite sure if I had not bumped into him, it would never have happened. I think he got cold feet. Something wasn't quite right. So anyway, I went the next day, had coffee, and that's how I began. So that's the end of that story. And I haven't looked back since. And so there were simple things that involved lettering, and it was the lettering that absolutely, doing a bit of lettering on a book jacket, using a 0.1 brush, excuse me, and gouache. And I loved doing that. All the other students weren't in the slightest bit interested because I was obviously very different from the others in that respect. So, and again, I can remember when, once I started working for Jock, he just said, well, you need to brush up your typography. Well, I didn't know what the word meant. I had to look in the dictionary to find a very good explanation. So, and I then went and had evening classes at the Central School of Arts and Crafts. And Colin Forbes was running the course, and a tutor called George Dorby did evening classes, and he really opened my eyes, and I owe him a lot. And, it was then a case of teaching myself. You learn on the job. And so that was that. And I was very lucky because the sort of work that came into to Jock's practice, he would just, some very juicy, attractive ones, he'd just say, he'd just give it to me to do. So it was just pure fun. He did all the hard administrative job. Mind you, he didn't pay me very much, but then that didn't matter because I was learning. It was like an education. I would have paid him, actually. So that was that, yeah. The company was then Kinneir Calvert Toohill Limited. So David had joined us by then. and that would be the mid-70s. And again, all a matter of chance, because Lou Klein was head of department at the graphic design at Royal College of Art then, and he got this job through his wife, who was also a designer, to design a logo for the St. Quentin en Yvelines, the French New Town. That's all it was, nothing more. And then he wasn't. Sorry. It was initially that, and they had to use the letter. She did it, the first logo, and had to use the letters SQ, which is not what one would normally do. But anyway, she did one, and then it all changed at that stage, and the architects wanted more, and she wasn't interested, and they wanted a report written. Now, Jock is brilliant at writing reports, so to cut a long story short, several design teams were invited to present their work and see if, to be chosen. And the French government were involved too. So there were lots of French companies. There weren't any other English design groups. It was just us. And so all the meetings were in French. I didn't get involved in any of the meetings. And I thought, and then when Jock came back, he wasn't very enthusiastic about how it went. But anyway, again, to cut a long story short, next minute there was a phone call from him and he said, we got the job. And I think that was to do with the fact of the road signs, all our work for airports and that. And there wasn't anyone in France with our past experience. So that's how that started. And what was interesting with Lou Klein, because it all came through the fact that I was teaching at the college, Lou was there, he mentioned it to me, I mentioned it to Jock, and sort of word of mouth. So all Lou wanted to do, said he didn't want to be involved in anything at all except maybe colour. But in the end, he just did a marvellous copper tree for a roundabout, which is actually, you can find it at Pentagram today, it's still there. So he was happy, we were happy, Jock did this big report, and the logo SQ was designed. I actually did that, and Jock's, this is how we worked together as a team. He just had the concept of how it could be in 3 dimensions. So, yes, I forget this bit. This is the important bit. And of course, I thought, a chance to design a new face for signs and everything. So that's when I started drawing what is now called Calvert. And they rejected it on the grounds that they thought it was too English. So, of course, the Tyne and Wear was happening almost at the same time. So I thought, okay, I'll, I think it could work for the Metro. For one very good reason, I just felt that there was so much Helvetica about then that it was a chance to use a richer face. And I think the serifs did just that. And Newcastle is very well endowed architecturally. It's got lovely architecture in that. So we used it for the Tyne and Wear, for all the signs. And I think it was called, it didn't really have a name, so it was just temporarily called Metro. And then Monotype, when they were based in Red Hill in England, they were, I used it on our letterhead for all our stationery, right? So we thought it would make a good commercial typeface. So we approached Monotype, they were very interested. That's where it has started being developed, and it was at that point, wasn't my idea, they said, let's call it Calvert, because there wouldn't be any problems with copyright. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was, I don't really like the idea of it just looks too like, I'm the greater sort of thing. And so, but it's popular, and it's now been taken up, well, some time now, with Monotype in the States, so I get royalties from that. And it's also used for the Royal College of Art on their signs and other...
It's used by Gov.uk,
Sorry?
Gov.uk online. It works digitally as well.
Yes. It's a proper
typeface.
digital face. Yes. So if you want to buy it, you can. Yeah. But we didn't. For the Metro, we complemented. I'll call it Calvert now, with Helvetica for texts and things like that, because it wasn't a digital face then. But now it is a digital face, so if they wanted to use it for everything, they could. And I think what's so wonderful now, for me anyway, with the Metro, is that they've got a brilliant design group, Darren Richardson, and he's taken up on the face. He actually likes it. Well, I mean, if he didn't, he'd probably use a different face.
I think he's your biggest fan ever. I met him 2 weeks ago. That's all he talks about is...
Yes. But he's a brilliant designer. And so aren't I lucky in that I don't have to do anything, and he just does he does lovely things with it. And now he's in the process of doing a book on it. So we hope that... I mean, it's about the Metro. I have to tell him this. It's not about me. I have to keep saying that because I get too much. I can't think of the word. As if I've done everything, and it's the same with the road signs. You see, Jock hardly gets noticed. Well, it was his job. He got the job. I was just in the right place at the right time. So two people across a table. You share ideas and thoughts. And that's how my passion for designing lettering happened. And that's how it moved on to British Rail. And that was a really big challenge. And then New Rail Alphabet, and then working with Henrik Kubel, because I draw. I have to draw, because I think for me it's about... head, eye and hand, not heart. Heart doesn't mean a thing to me. I mean, heart's an emotional thing. But the head, you're working the ideas in your head, and the eye, because you're seeing, and the hand. And it's, for me, everybody, if they drew the same character, it would be different. Because we are physically different, and we think differently. Well, not always differently. So I have to draw, and it's important for me, especially with Rail Alphabet 2, which is the one on exhibition at the Design Museum. The actual drawing process takes a long time, and it's the time that I think is important. Whereas digitally on screen, I mean, everyone's designing typefaces now and fonts and that for everything, and they're all got little quirky this and little this and that. And I always think of a typeface a bit like the human body. We're all different shapes, and some are, quirky, but some have character. Some are plain ugly, but you like them for their ugliness, and some have. My idea is that they shouldn't date. The ones I've done, that they don't date. So they're not quirky. I am actually working on a quirky typeface at the moment, which is completely illegible, yeah. Okay. Alpha pasta, yes.
So that's the internal creative bit. But then you've got the road signs, have got all the science of distance and audience and perception.
Yes.
So how do you bring that together?
Well, my simple answer to that is simply intuition. You know what the constraints of any particular job are, and you must establish the constraints. So with the road signs, you know what the problem is. I mean, the motorway signs, they were designed to work for the driver. and to be absolutely read at certain stages so that the decision can be made at the right point. So that's it. So once you know all of that, you just look, and if you just know if something's working. It's also about, for me, it's about negative and positive shapes in an actual letter form in an alphabet. If you you know, the negative shapes are the bits that aren't there. Sorry, I'm treating you as a child, aren't I? Yeah. Apologies.
No, do so, please.
And so if you can draw those negative shapes, the actual positive shapes are formed, as opposed to drawing the positive shapes and just thinking whatever happens in the gaps is
irrelevant.
Whatever.
Yeah.
The process started, I think the commission was 1957, I think, yeah. And so I was on a very quick learning curve, as you can imagine. And that would have been, and it ended in, well, the last report, the all-purpose roads, the Wallboys one, was published in 1963. But the whole road sign project wasn't made law in an act in Parliament until 1965, I think. And then, of course, to actually apply the system right across the whole country took several years, and some very bad starts. One of the worst things that they did was to actually put too much information on a sign. So it has to be thought out first before you do anything. But the Ministry of Transport, as it was then, it's now the Ministry for Transport. I've met up with them on several occasions where they've had little mini exhibitions, and they are, I have full admiration for civil servants because they're dedicated to actually getting things right, and they're just pleased to be involved with something like that. So that's always rewarding when it's what you've done is shared with a much larger public. And of course it doesn't always work and it isn't always applied, and certain improvements are made and changes, but on the whole it's very much as it was in the early 60s. So that's it. So
the practice has to manage those projects and all those aspects,
yeah.
Civil servants, decision makers, persuade politicians to make decisions.
Yes. Well, I mean, that all happens through the committees. And the key civil servant on the committee was a man called, I can't remember his initials, Osborne. And it was at his suggestion that we look at applying the system for the motorways to the all-purpose roads. It was his idea. And he was a delightful man and very bright and just keen to get the job done. So there were these regular meetings that were held with the committees, and some of them, and they included the police and racing drivers and a big mix of people. And Jock made all the presentations bar one. And I was working on the pictograms and the lettering more than anything else, and Jock was responsible for thinking through the whole logic of the system. And again, we discuss everything together, but that was his genius in terms of working that out, because he had that very logical mind, Scottish. So anyway, I think what happened with the roadworks sign, symbol, pictogram, and whatever you like to call it, Jock had Asian flu then when this meetings was supposed to happen. And I, well, very young, and I had to make the presentation to this very intimidating committee, as you can imagine. So I bought a suit. I spent all my money on looking respectable, and I made the presentation, and they were quite bit sarcastic about the man at work, and just saying he looked like a deep sea diver because of the shape of the head was too round. I mean, little things like that. But that's the whole design process. You just take it on board. You don't get upset or anything. You go back and any criticism or challenge, we would look at it and make amends or improvements or argue for it to stay as it is. So that's how it's just seemed to be general agreement all the time. And then, of course, everything is tested by the Road Research Laboratory. I mean, they play an enormous part in it. So that's that story, yeah.
So that information from them feeds back
yeah.
into the design. So the design then becomes altered with the feedback from the Road Traffic Authority
yes.
or from
yes.
and whatever commission.
Yes.
So before you got to the Newcastle, the Metro job, did you already know about Newcastle? You mentioned the architecture, for example. Had you visited Newcastle before the Metro commission?
Me personally?
Yeah.
I can't remember, actually.
Okay.
Can't remember Newcastle. Why would I have visited Newcastle? I think not, actually.
Yeah.
I think the Metro was a wonderful introduction to Newcastle. And it was at the time when there was a motorway going right up into Newcastle. I can't remember the man who made that all happen. And then it stopped. And then it never happened. And it would have destroyed Newcastle. I'm sure you know about that period in history.
Well, that's Biker, isn't it? That's
yeah.
Biker.
That was the time. That was the
story,
time.
isn't it?
But
that's all they were interested in from the council at that point. They really wanted that motorway, but then never got built.
Yeah. But so I know lots of visits up with the architects, Faulkner Brown, Hendy, and Wilkinson. Is it?
Don't know Wilkinson?
The name of the architects of the Tyne and Wear Metro.
I know Faulkner Brown, but I don't know
Faulkner Brown. Well, there were three as a partnership. Faulkner Brown, Hendy, and Watkinson's. I think that was it. And they were wonderful architects. And again, it's just we were lucky in that. They invited us to do the job.
Yeah. So was it Faulkner
The
Brown?
architects invited us, and the Tyne and Wear Metro organisation, which is replaced now with
Nexus.
That's right. Nexus is a good name.
It's a good name, isn't it? And plenty of opportunity for good fonts.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Nexus seems to have done, brilliant in working with.
Darren.
So lots of visitors up there.
Okay.
And one of because we were asked to do the whole identity as well as the signs. And I can't find much relating to it except lots of letters, documentation going backwards and forwards, mainly to do with money. And you see, Jock did all of that. Such a headache. I have been so lucky because dealing with money and administration, it's killing, isn't it? So Jock did all of that, but I obviously went to lots of meetings because it was my lettering and my idea to do these very big platform signs, right? Really big. The idea being that, and also to have the different stations in different colours. The idea being that if you're a passenger and you just look through the window, you would see a big slab of a letter, part of a letter in blue or green or whatever, and that would be enough. And they were all on these wonderful vitreous enamel panels. And there was the concept was a very simple one. It was just basically yellow as the key colour. And in my simple mind, I thought, all the trains could be just yellow, right? Yellows. And then there's this strip band at the top of the platform signs, which is in yellow, and it carries an arrow and exit. So very simple, and that was it. But the present designers times change anyway. I think they felt that different colours was too 80s, I never know what 80s looks like, really. I can never think in terms of decades. I just feel that I design now how I was designing then. So I think they've kept the big lettering, and they've also used bands and that. And I think I've got a more restrained colour in black, grey and yellow, which is very elegant. So I'm looking forward to actually seeing it, really am. So, and then I think the way it's been applied across Nexus to the buses, where they mix Calvert with Futura, which sounds like very crazy bedfellows, but it works. And it's consistently done, and I think that's why it does work. If you are consistent with applying an idea, it will work. It was like the 2012 Olympics. Everybody absolutely hated the logo and the lettering. Most people. There's a great outcry. But the fact that Wolf Olins applied it so well and so consistently, it worked. It did its job. And that's the main thing, that it does its job. So
I think it went astray for a bit. It went all over the place with different fonts being used, and went a bit wild for a few years when they introduced different fonts for all sorts
right.
of things. And it was only when Darren Richardson came in
they were thinking of dropping it, Metro, whatever. Absolutely. So, I mean, again, this is how things go. It depends on the whim of a chairman often. Because they want to make their mark, therefore we must change everything. Mm-hmm. And that's happened quite a lot at Heathrow Airport. Mm. But yes, so Darren Richardson, I'm delighted he's up there, living up there, got a great team, and it's marvellous. So I'm looking forward to this book, which is about the Metro, not me.
The accidental icon. Yeah.
Yeah. So are we nearly through?
Well, can I ask you about going up to Newcastle? Did you travel up to Newcastle on the train and then stay overnight for those meetings, or did you?
I think we flew.
Okay.
But again, I mean, we did a lot of flying to Glasgow and flying everywhere. So we may not. I don't think we went because of time. We probably flew. Mm-hmm. It has got an airport, has it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's got a fantastic metro stop.
Oh, right.
But when you were working on that, you've been working on the traditional line, the old line that went out to the coast. So that was the first line, wasn't it?
Right,
on the metro?
it was just the first bit.
Yeah, yes. So you've been thinking
just
about...
half a dozen stations.
Yeah.
Desmond was one, and...
all the way to Whitley Bay.
The football one. What's that called?
St James's.
St James's. Well, you see... What was nice about that had to... Oh, no, I'm talking too much.
No, you're not.
No, well, there was at the time where we thought we could do murals as well. And David Toohill did a wonderful one, a football one, because it's also black, you see, because of Newcastle. Those are the colours, aren't they, of the footballs. But that didn't go all the way. Some ideas just don't go all the way. Very few do. It's the way it is, isn't it? Mm-hmm. But what was so exciting is that the actual metro trains, which were made by, you would know...
Oh, was it not German?
German company.
It wasn't Siemens, was it?
Yeah. Anyway, that was also being newly designed as well. So they weren't just taking stock from anywhere. And I can remember going across a field on a trial track, in this one carriage. And that was such fun. I mean, I have to say I wasn't very impressed by the design of it, though. But never mind. That's how things go. I probably did. But so that was fun. And also getting all the colours right for the enamel. That was very important to get everyone working on it who were contributing to it. I think the other good thing about the Metro was there was to be no advertising. I'm sure that's changed now. Has it changed? Yeah, money speaks, doesn't it? I think that, and I think also that we were going to play classical Mozart and classical music. Does that happen? It should be lovely. Calms you down, doesn't it?
Yeah, but they played it at the stations also to the young
So
people.
I'm just looking forward to seeing how it, with fresh eyes, I can see how it is.
Did you actually see the system working? Were you working before it all together?
No, never. Now let me tell you that story. The Queen opened it on the first, I forget the exact date, but it was 1980. I think it was January. But I wasn't invited. So I never got to see it. You see, women have a hard time. And I think there weren't many women in a position that I found myself in. And I can remember Jock saying, well, they just don't know what to make about it. They just they can't work it out. Why should a woman have that position? So there was all of that I had to battle with.
It was one of my questions, actually.
I mean, once you start working with anybody, it all goes, because it's the actual job that matters, and they realise what you're about by then. So it's a bit of a woman thing as well.
Yeah.
So I did go to lots of meetings mainly to discuss the colours, because that was so important to get them right, the actual enamels. But it's a lovely material too, and it lasts.
Stick out about the meetings themselves. How did the meetings go? You've suggested?
Oh, well, Jock went to all the presentations. I never went to any presentation. So I only went to meetings when something was agreed and it was about the quality. But otherwise, Jock did all the presentations. And he would come back, either with good news or not good news. Because I have to say, with the actual M on a square, the Metro M, we had ideas. Well, actually, it was actually mine, but I don't like to say this is my idea and that. It's just ridiculous, really, But the M was three-dimensional, and it was yellow, and it went at an angle like that. That's the ground, and it was cut like that. So you'd see an M in portrait, vertical, if you can understand. And then another version, because that was ridiculous, vertical one, on a cross with an M in each one, like that, so you could read it from every angle. They absolutely loved it, right? So of course it's not going to happen, is it? I think partly because, so they did trials as well. They made full-scale ones. I've got some lovely images of a full-scale one. That can go in the book maybe, yeah, if I can find it. But I think it wasn't used they wanted something more conventional. The square works. You get a square at most metro stations in Russia. Everywhere it's a square, and it does work. And I think the vertical one could have been dangerous. I think children would have used it as a slide, maybe, or dogs to pee up against. I don't know, but anyway, it didn't happen. So that's how things take a long time. You don't just go straight in with the one idea. Well, you do, but you have to work quite hard to get it to work. So what pleased me is that they really went for the large signs, because that was quite innovative at that time. And they were beautifully made. And I drew each letter full size. Now, don't ask me how big they were. The Excite, I don't know, because I'm bound to get that wrong. Something like 600 centimetres. How much is that in feet? Anyway, don't worry about that. They're big. But I drew each letter full size on something called Coda Trace. And I've still got them because I found it very difficult to throw them away. So I've got those hand-drawn full size because it's difficult to scale something up. Then it was difficult to scale something up. So I had control over that, and it's always important to have control. Right.
But did you say the yellow of the trains.
So,
The yellow of the trains
Yeah.
was chosen by you as well, was it?
Yes, yeah. Yes. Well, it's a very simple idea. I mean, we used yellow too at on the airports because it's just very legible colour anyway. The black on yellow for way out was important. Most important sign is the exit sign. I mean, the real ones are green, aren't they? White on green. If you know what I mean by real, yeah. Standard safety ones, yeah. So yes.
So the committees, I guess, were mostly men, or all men. The committee that you were dealing with for the Metro, were they determined? I mean, they seem to be very enthusiastic from the interviews that Silvie's done. These men seem to be incredibly enthusiastic about the project.
They were all, yeah. I have to say, the enthusiasm was intense. It was there. They wanted it. They knew they were working on something great because the Metro. That was the very first in the whole world. And I mean, now they're all over the place, aren't they? So, yes, I mean, it is this team effort and this collaboration that works as a designer. You can't think of yourself as someone imposing your views down ever. It's got to be, for these big jobs, there's got to be a rapport there and an understanding. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And
so one of the other questions I had was about we spoke about constraint and of the client and the possibilities for creativity. How was that balance in the Newcastle job? Can you remember when you're coming up? Was there points of frustration that the committee wasn't? You spoke about the M, but on the other hand, they accepted the idea of yellow. Mm-hmm. So how did that actually work? Did you have allies on that committee, or were the committee...
It's difficult. Generally... Well, as I didn't attend any of the meeting, it's difficult to say. It was only what Jock said about them. So I really can't actually answer.
So it sounded like Faulkner Brown were...
I think they were happy to go along with things to a certain extent. But what was... You just knew that the Tyne and Wear, I can't remember the proper formal name, but the one that's now replaced by Nexus completely, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tyneside Passenger Transport Authority.
But they had this absolutely hideous logotype. You've seen it, haven't you? Sort of, I think there's supposed to be a river in the middle or something.
Well,
not the river, the Mersey would be with the Mersey. No, it's not the Mersey, that's Liverpool, isn't it? Tyne, of course, it's Tyne and Wear. Yeah. No, Wear is not, Wear is like what you wear, yeah. No, Sunderland, it goes as far as Sunderland, doesn't it? That's right.
So that's the Wear bit.
Yeah.
So that's Wear side.
So, yes. So, I think they just accepted everything more or less until they didn't. But the thing is, they wanted that logo on the trains. And I was all for simply the word Metro. So there's a little model upstairs of a yellow Metro train, which you might have seen. And it just has Metro on it. And then on the front of it, it has the destination in Capannay, which is very simple.
Yeah, it's
really, too simple, you see.
No, I don't think that's really interesting because the sort of Newcastle sort of cringe, if you like, of being, on the edge, whereas you're suggesting something that's universal. It's really interesting. Sort of like, Metro. This could be New York, but of course Newcastle. Well, we're going to talk about the time. We're going to talk about Newcastle. It is really, really interesting.
You had Faulkner Brown. They were your allies, weren't they? They brought you in.
Sorry.
Faulkner Brown, the architects.
Faulkner Brown, the architects.
I mean, they were your allies.
Absolutely. It would not have worked without Faulkner Brown. They were wonderful.
And their design principles.
And they would try things out,
yours.
and they were very much with us. Yes.
Mm-hmm. But very similar. Were there very similar firms in terms of outlook, philosophy?
Yes.
Or was there differences between Faulkner Brown's philosophy and your practice philosophy, or was it similar?
I would say it was similar. Yes. I mean, there is an understanding. You're on the same wavelength, and if you're not, then it's not going to work. And we were.
But I found them amazing.
Because, I mean, to actually use that typeface, that was quite a big step.
Yeah, exactly.
It really was.
Yeah.
You know, I'm surprised they didn't say, why don't you use Helvetica?
Exactly.
So, I mean, they accepted all of that, but then we went to a lot of trouble to show how we presented it. I mean, that's terribly important, how you present it and the colours. So it just has that wow factor.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, just a quick one. The Faulkner Brown design guide came out in 75, I think. Did you influence each other actually with this? Because your principles seem so similar. This clean design, this simple, clean design. Do you think you influenced them as well? I
don't. I can't say specifically yes or no. Really, it's just a matter of like minds and all trying to achieve. So, I mean, if someone says, oh, that doesn't work, or something about, I don't think that's the right arrow, because at first I tried to, I mean, you wouldn't believe it, but I went for a retro arrow, right? That means a Robin Hood one. Well, that's ridiculous, but I thought, that would be interesting. Well, of course it wasn't going to happen, was it? So in that respect, they would put the brakes on, but I mean, it just fell away. It wasn't an issue. So it's just the way people work together as a team, isn't it? Yeah.
But these two firms are modernist. They're the upstart firms, aren't they? It's another upstart firm.
Yeah.
And if I'm thinking
definitely that. I like that.
Yeah.
I like being thought of an upstart modernist. Certainly, modernism is at the root of everything that we've done.
Design any of the wayfinding signage for the metro? The actual signage, the wayfinding signage?
The wayfinding signage.
For any of the stations, did you design any of that?
Oh, you're talking about designing
the actual
signage, yes. No, absolutely. Yes. I mean, that was very much the same system as the one for British Rail. The arrow, the legend, and the arrow on the end. Because if you come up with something that works to that degree, you keep applying it. And of course, it's different now in terms of how they use pictograms as well, don't they? So there's a kind of well, it's just how things get different or change slightly in time. The same with what are they calling it now? Great British Railways. That's what it's going to be called, Great British Railway. So I don't mind. I like the word great. Anyway.
You like the letters of the word great, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah, G-R-E-A-T.
That's right.
Good design letters.
Sometimes I'm very self-indulgent. Yeah.
It's not like those
I
S's
think
and
I'm allowed
Q's.
to be at my age. Yeah.
Talking about boy and girl thing, you touched on it before. Did you face? I mean, transport is such a male-dominated field, and you experienced quite a lot of it. Did you face many challenges being a woman? Did many men?
Did I face many challenges as a woman? Do you mean generally speaking?
In the transport.
In the transport.
Yeah.
I think, to be honest, no. I think thinking of British Airports Authority as it was then, and British Rail, no, I didn't actually. No, I think I think it's what I've said before, is the minute you start working with someone on a problem and they know what you're about, and it's about respect. Once you have their respect, it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman, really. I mean, I would have problems with one assistant that we took on, and any new assistant would be expected to make the tea and coffee. I did that. I mean, it's part of how it is. And because he was a man, he hated doing that. So he'd always bang the cups down and bang this and that. And he said he could never, ever, ever work for a woman. So this is it. This is an attitude. And I think also teaching at the Royal College in the early 1966 till 2001, with a short spell as head of graphic design. But there were students that just thought, no, graphic design is a man's job. I've been told that on several occasions. Women just go to art college to find a husband. So that was the attitude then. And if a man said to you in the 50s that that's a pink elephant crossing the road, you agree that is a pink elephant crossing the road. It was definitely like that. I mean, it really didn't bother me at all.
Okay, I've got one final question,
Yeah.
right? And this goes back to the M. And the
M.
M and the Calvert font.
This is a big subject. Yeah, I've got some stories there. Right, because there's no serif.
Correct.
Now that is, I'm sorry, I'm getting lost for words. Monotype used to have great big gatherings, there's a word for them, where people would come all over the world, and they were held in Cambridge at Queen's College, and that. There were big deals then until Monotype went to America. And so you spent a few nights there for all the presentations. And I can remember at breakfast, I was talking to someone, and this man came up. His name was Colin Banks, of Banks and Miles. And he just interrupted the conversation, and he said, Monotype sent your face to Brooke Crutchley of the Cambridge Press, and they sent it back because they thought it was just so awful with all the half serifs. And then he walked off. I mean, that's terrible, isn't it? And so the man I was talking to, what's that? So because I'd done something that you should never do. And I thought, great. And I did it for a very good reason too. Because there's a typeface called Rockwell, which has normal serifs. And it's just the way, again, intuitively you start doing something and you start drawing something by hand again, it evolves, it's there, it's you. And that's how that happened. But it upset a lot of people. And now nobody thinks about it. And of course it's what gives that M its character. If it had a serif, slab serif, on both sides, it wouldn't be such an interesting shape. That's how I see it. I think that's quite characterful, the square. I like the square now. And of course they just have that on the front of the trains, don't they?
Yeah.
So that's utter simplicity. That's more simple than Metro. So that's what. So I'm pleased that you pass the baton on, and someone else wins the race with it. So I like that.
But you didn't like it initially.
What?
Did you?
Oh no, I just thought a square wasn't as interesting as a three-dimensional one like that cut at a slot.
Yeah.
That was the point. Really, that would have been really something, as opposed to a consistent statement that works and does its job. And I was wanting more. But so if you go for more, you can always come back. So you should always go for the highest.
Yeah.
And then you can always come down. Yeah.
But it works. And you're right, it's very identifiable.
So I'm really looking forward to... you see, what terrifies me is when I do see something that I've seen bits here and bits there on television and there. When I experience it as a passenger, that will be the real test. So I'm looking forward to that moment, and I don't know whether I will think fantastic or this or that. I don't know what I will think until I see it. So that's a bit scary, because I want to like it, obviously.
Well,
I hope I will.
We look forward to seeing you up.
Yeah,
I have
please,
to come, yeah.
Please come and visit.
For now.
Right.
Big
I think
thank you.
we've done quite
Big thank
well.
you.
We've done extremely
Yeah.
well. Thank you very much.